Billy was the kid whom everyone in his family and hometown of Sangre Grande pampered. He was actually born in Charlieville, as it was the custom in East Indian families for expectant mothers to go to their parents' home to deliver their babies. His father Ishmael and mother Shamshun Ali welcomed him into this world on June 3rd, 1956. The sixth of 7 children, he was named Shabil. In those days, Ishmael worked on a farm, and Shamshun worked from home as a seamstress and owner of a small variety shop. Growing up in the diverse village of Sangre Grande, Billy, as he was fondly called, enjoyed helping around the home, tending to the kitchen garden and the chickens. Being very good with his hands, the resourceful Billy built his own bicycle from used parts. He also enjoyed sports, especially cricket, but one of his favorite pastimes was to get lost in the world of cinema on Saturday afternoons.
Do you remember anything about Dad's childhood?
Well, from what we've heard from our aunts and uncles, they were a very close-knit family, and they all had responsibilities around the house as expected. But they also loved, Dad loved his sports, his cricket, his football, marble pitch, and we know about his love for, cycling. He loved his bicycles and so on. And he would be back and forth between Sangre Grande and Charlieville.
As I heard, he attended Charlieville Astra Primary School. During the week, he would stay with the grandparents, and on weekends, he would go back home, which would have been in Sangre Grande at the time.
So after primary school in Charlieville, he did go back to live in Sangre Grande, where he attended Northeastern College for his secondary school education. And in Sangre Grande was where he met Imam Noor, who was the Imam of the Sangre Grande Masjid in the 1960s, and they became very close at such a young age as well.
How I get in connection with Mufti Shabil family is, Mufti Shabil used to come as a little boy to my maktab. And long ago, I don't know if it's still happening now, but Mufti Shabil parents will keep a little reading every Thursday night. So that's how I was very acquainted with them, by going by them and reading and sitting down and having dinner and different things. So we get very attached early o'clock.
I'm starting to get a sense of what life would have been back then in Sangre Grande.
Well, it's interesting. I always like to hear what it's like growing up, even Dad's experience growing up in Sangre Grande as well.
Well, it's about probably half mile from his house to the masjid. So riding bicycle was probably a hobby he had. Because not only that, he used to ride to go all Tamana, which is about 7 miles from here, and ride to other parts of the country, because they didn't have much vehicle at the time. And even today, we have people who like riding, and he had one of those who like riding. He liked to repair watches, he liked meeting people, he liked swimming, he liked fishing. And then, as a youth, then we get involved in some of these social events. Mufti Shabil was probably about 14 and I was already about 25. So the age group was not that bad, but we grew up as people of the same age group. He was very diligent and devoted. He wanted to he probably had a vision to be able to cope, and to want to know more than I had already learned. Most of the time we studied the Quran together or the Hadith together, and certain points I couldn't reflect on. He said, probably just like this, and like that. And so he was really an inspiration for me also to be able to push-up thus far.
As you know, Dad spent a lot of time outdoors. He always loved outdoor activities, and I guess that's where we got it from. You know, the cycling, and I picked up the motorcycling, and you grew up riding a lot of bikes and all that too. So he had a love for the outdoors, for sure.
He always thought balance was important in every aspect of life. And Dad was like any typical youngster. But I wonder what, growing up in Sandigrani and going to Maktab was like back then.
Maktab classes and they were sitting on a bench, holding a book in your hand. And we had boys and girls together. And Mufti Shabil was one of the A students, for want of a better word. He always excelled in the other children. And, he keep pushing me, to be able to be a little more vigilant in my studies and trying to know what I didn't know. And probably because of this, I have learned so much.
In 1970, the Tablighi Jamaat, an Islamic missionary movement, visited Trinidad from Gujarat, India. During their visit, they spent some time at the Sankargandhi Masjid, where they piqued the interest of the teenaged Shabil.
So according to one of the stories I heard, Dad and I think two of his friends were passing by the masjid, the mosque, and I think the mosque was open, and they looked inside the window. Those days the masjid used to be mainly opened only for the Friday prayer, the Jummah Salat.
Yes, and apparently he saw men sitting in a circle dressed in all white Muslim garb, and one was reading from a book.
Abdul Hafiz Mania, who led the group, is reported to have said that the 14-year-old Shabil walked into the masjid to see what they were doing and was so intrigued that he made it a regular stop after school.
Dad even spent his summer vacations with the Tabligh Jamaat, moving about Trinidad and Tobago, and he would spend 40 days with the Jamaat.
Yes, actually I think that's where he met Mullah Abdul Salam, who was from Point Fortin. At that time he had just accepted Islam, and after he embraced Islam, they became, very close through the work of Tabligh Jamaat, of course.
That was the beginning of our friendship, and I looked at him more as a teacher and as an elder because I was new to Islam, and so I looked at him with respect, more respect. But that's the beginning, and that's when the friendship started. Then he looked pure. I just saw purity in him.
That program ended on a high note, as Maulana recalls.
That culminated with the Jamaat from South Africa, 3 people, comprising of 3 people, Maulana Mangira Salim, Bashir Bai, and Ibrahim Padia. So it was an invitation. They were inviting us and encouraging us to go to India, to study and become like alims, maulanas, and come back to the country to teach. The Jamaat realized the need, they became aware of the need of Islamic knowledge, Islamic awareness, and they were concerned about Muslims in this area, West Indies, South America, and they had the fikr and worry for the growth of Islam in this part of the world, so they invited us to go to India. The 10 of us, we went to India, and we spent 4 months in Tabligh, moving around, and after the 4 months, then 6 of us would remain to study, and the other 4 would come back to Trinidad.
Yes, Maulana's recollection of that time reflects exactly how Dad felt, I'm sure.
Well, the first 4 months in India were very hard months because we were not accustomed to the climate, to the food, and then moving around in Tabligh from mosque to mosque. So, it was kind of hard on us, and we were very homesick. I should say myself and Mufti Shabil. Mufti Shabil and myself, we were very, very homesick. The others were dealing with it, they were coping. But Mufti Shabil and myself, we were very homesick, and we used to cry a lot for home and the family. And but it exposed us and made us seasoned and made us better, so that when we went to Bangalore, to the madrasa in Bangalore, when we went there, we felt better, because now coming to madrasa is, you're going to get your own room, it's going to be hostel, So you have your own privacy, you have your own bed, you have your own room, your own companions, 4 room, and the toilets and the bath. It was like home then, coming home after being like on the streets, masjid to masjid to masjid to masjid. But when we arrived at the madrasa in Bangalore, and we met our principal, Maulana Abu Saud, I would never forget that morning that we arrived in Bangalore, we met him. It was at the time of Fajr Salat, and he welcomed us with a smile. He had his turban on, a rumal, and that beautiful, bright, shiny face and that $1 million smile. And he welcomed us, and that smile always remained with me. And we felt some peace. We immediately became connected with him.
Hazrat Maulana Abu Saud Ahmad was indeed a highly learned Islamic scholar in India. The Emir of Sharia for the state of Karnataka in 1960, he founded the first Arabic college in the state, which he named Darul Ulum Sabilur Rashad. Started with 7 students in 1960, today this college is the largest center for Islamic education in Karnataka.
He played a very crucial, important role in our staying in India. The one who sent us to Bangalore, he was a great wali, was a great sheikh. He was the Amir of Tabligh at that time, known as Hazrat Ji, Sheikh Maulana Inamul Hassan. It is said he was blessed with the gift of kashf, foresightedness, that third eye, that mental perception. He looked at us and sent us to Bangalore, and he made a wise choice, because had he not sent us to Bangalore, I don't think we would have made it. Because he looked at us, and with that vision of his, that deep vision of his, seeing these 6 boys, English speaking, Bangalore is moderate in temperature, as well as there are people who speak English in Bangalore, everything, he made a good judgment and sent us to Bangalore. The principal, his role was very, very important, because he was like our mother and father.
While Dad was studying in India back then, his entire family migrated to Canada. Well, there were no emails, WhatsApp and whatnot back then. So they were all students, foreign students would wait for letters, and that's how they would communicate. And his sister would write about how the chickens is, etc. I'm guessing the other guys would have a good laugh at that.
I just spoke about that. I actually remember our auntie, well, Soraya is the correct name, we fondly call her Auntie Zuri, our youngest aunt. She would give me stories along with our grandmother, Mama, that Dad would write to them. Of course, letters would take weeks back then, about the price of butter and the price of milk in India as comparison to back home in Trinidad. But regardless, Dad and his other colleagues who he went to study with, they adjusted well to madrasa life, different country, different place, different language, and that even, from what I understood, became a favorite of some of the teachers.
Also, who was very instrumental was Professor Nair Rabbani. He was very fluent in English, so he liked us a lot, and we could have spoken to him, Hazrat Nair Rabbani. So we settled in, and Shabil was, mashallah, a model student. I would say that Mufti Shabil became the favorite of the Qari, the teacher who would teach Quran, teach Qiraat. He was a very famous Qari of India, very rare Qari. He was known as Qari Azhar Sahib from Bihar. Mufti Shabil was his favorite student. So he would call Mufti Shabil to his room and treat him, but he wouldn't call him alone, so we would go too. So we would reap from Mufti Shabil's benefits from his association with the Ustad.
Overall, Shabil spent 8 years in India. During that time, he became proficient in the Urdu and Arabic language. Before graduating from Darul Ulum Sabilur Rashad in June 1980 as a Maulana and Qori, he visited Trinidad with his principal.
I think it was in the year 1977, if I'm not mistaken, around 1977, he paid a visit to Trinidad with Mufti Shabil. He saw the place, saw everything, But even before that visit, it was as though he was seeing these boys from West Indies and as though he was looking at South America and the Caribbean and training us to go back and become ambassadors of the Prophet ﷺ and flag bearers of Islam, even before his coming to Trinidad. But when he came here and he saw the level of Islam and the level of tajweed and pronunciation of Quran, he became even more determined in building us and equipping us to come back and to open a madrasa and for Islam to rise in these parts.
Mum mentioned that her father, Maulana Ismail Adam, respectfully known as Mulvi Adam, had a great admiration for Dad. And he approached Dad concerning marriage.
Yes, actually in 1978, Bari Hazrat had, who was like his principal, his mentor, a father figure. He came to Trinidad in 1978 and performed the nikah, or the marriage ceremony between Mom and Dad. I know we affectionately call him Bari Hazrat, but Bari is like a term of endearment. It really means big in Urdu.
Yes.
It's a person of, Bari Hazrat, whose real name is actually Maulana Abu Saud Ahmad. And his son, Mufti Ashraf Ali, who was also a teacher of Dad, is who Dad named me, the name Ashraf, after his teacher. And of course, your name Arshad comes from, Shabil or Rashad, from the word Rashid,
Yes.
And from Shabil or Rashad, we got Rashad Avenue here in Kunupia, where the Darul is currently located, and where the Girls College and even the Boys College started, where we live, home in San Juan, Rashad Avenue. And now, alhamdulillah, many years after, we have the Rashadi Foundation.
So Mum joined Dad in his last couple years of study in India. And he also taught her when he came back to Trinidad. That would have been from 78 to 81. He taught Mum at home as well.
Yes, because after he graduated from Bangalore, as an alim, as an Islamic scholar, he went on to further his studies in the field of ifta, to become a mufti.
Yes.
At Dabel Jamia Islamia. A mufti, we use the term mufti, somebody who is versed, an expert in Islamic ruling, Sharia law, legal decisions according to Sharia law, etc.
Yes.
Mufti Shabil Ali returned to Trinidad from India in September 1981. He lived briefly in Barataria with his in-laws before moving to San Juan and attending the Nuri Islam Mosque. Wasting no time in putting his studies to use, he taught classes for children and adults there.
Yeah, well, for 1 year, we had a meeting, a big meeting in Monroe Masjid, where the elders and the brothers of Tabligh, we all sat together. We had a mashwara. It was decided Mufti Shabil his place would be Sawa, Nur Islam Mosque, and I would stay in Monroe Road. I would come there. We would establish classes, maktab. So he started in Nur Islam. He taught maktab there, and I stayed in Monroe Road and taught maktab there for about 1 year. So we worked with the people first. And that was also the advice of the principal, that you go back, do not get yourself involved in any controversial affairs. And our principal's message to Mufti Shabil and myself and to us was go back there and win the hearts of people.
He had a class probably, I would say 5 or 7 days a week, I'm not sure to the amount, but I used to go every Tuesday for his classes in the mosque, in the Nuri Islam Mosque. A great experience, to probably to understand or to probably share. I am one of those persons, who always like, people to excel in me. And if I am responsible for you to be excelled on a high pedestal, I don't mind. I have no animosity for people who might be just the teacher and probably, they could come out to teach me. Not that it's their pleasure. He might have been a scholar, but he always admitted that I was his scholar, and he could not lead, especially prayer, if I was present. He would join. He would probably give the lectures, give the classes, whatever have you. But he would never lead the person if I am present. When I question myself, will you the Mufti? He said, no, you are my Ustad. So I have to respect you. Despite you might not be reading correctly, but still, I feel an honor to let you lead the prayer and not me.
Dad really cherished his relationship with Imam Noor, who was self-taught back then. I suppose that's why Dad was really well known, for he was one of the very few highly trained Islamic scholars back then.
Yeah. But the stipend he received from teaching, the allowance or the income at that time would have been very minimal, So I guess, maybe because he needed another form of income, a little more to survive, he got into, a little part-time trade as a salesman. He would have learned from his brother-in-laws or uncles, Shabil and Farouk, and he sold, household items and some clothing, curtains and so on. He did that for a couple hours, a few days for the week, maybe just to have a little extra income and so on.
After a couple of years doing sales and being a successful salesperson, Dad felt as though he was being sidetracked from his real commitment that he made to his principal in India to open a Darul right here in Trinidad.
Yes, actually, that sales didn't last too long. I think the same year I was born, 1982, was the year he gave up that, sales, studying on the streets and so on, because he wanted to focus more and at the same time, be totally independent and not under one of the Muslim organizations at the time. He wanted to teach, his own stuff as much as he wanted freely and so on. So that's more or less how the Darul started, the same year I was born. So that's why I keep track of my age, because every year with the annual Jalsa and graduation, it's the same age as me. So I think we just enter in 38 years now.
Yes.
Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah was, even though it was his home, he never policed us. He wasn't regimented. The classrooms were small. Actually, we had one classroom, and that was his garage. So in the morning, he will drive out this car, we will pack up the desk. In the evening, he will remove the desk, pack it in one corner, and he will park his vehicle there. There were only about 4 of us in a room staying there. It had a big yard, and during break time for school, that was our play area. It was something new to Trinidad, that kind of institution. It was new to us, right? A balance between Islamic and academic was something new. So it was the environment was very, very, very welcoming, especially to teenagers who grew up in this multicultural society, and you never really had 100% Islamic environment. So, but because some of us grew up in a Muslim home, we kind of adapted quickly to it.
My father and Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah are very good friends from way back when. And when Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah came back to Trinidad, my father was one of the first people that he asked to help him establish the Darul Uloom. So my father was his student and his friend, and he assisted in establishing the Darul Uloom. He is one of the founding members of the Darul Uloom. So I would say that influenced my being a student here, but also Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah taught me at the local maktab class at Nur Islam Masjid. And I remember I have this memory of him teaching there, and one day I went back home, and this is like probably before I wrote Common Entrance, my dad asked me, what you want to be when you grow up? And I say, I want to be Mufti Shabil. I didn't even know what that is, So my dad said, well, he's going to open a school, and he will be teaching there if you want to go to the school. So I say, yeah. That time we didn't have a school. There was nothing here. As you would know, the school was established under his house in Sao. So I attended school there for probably half of one school year before it was moved up to Kunupie, and then we had one building here which housed the school, the offices, the kitchen, everything. And that's how I started here, and that's basically how I was influenced to study here.
Founded in 1984 with very humble beginnings at Mufti's home, the Darul Uloom began with the establishment of the Boys' College, which expanded from the garage to the downstairs of Mufti's home. Several students came from impoverished backgrounds, but as many confirmed, he never turned anyone away.
It was during the August holidays, and we did speak to him. He very calmly suggested that, we have to do the entrance exam and see exactly what it is, where we could head with it. And one thing that stands out at that time, actually, there was the issue of the student fees. And, well, we're not from a very wealthy background or so. So my brother from Monroe, he decided that he would pay the fees for me. He met with Mufti Shabil in my presence and told him, here what, he will pay for the full 8 years up front. But he indicated that it wasn't a problem. Mufti Shabil indicated that. So he just paid for 1 year, and after that we paid it like term by term. In my opinion, he was trying to get people from across Trinidad, right? And it worked out in a way, because even at that time in my class there was one guy from Icacos, one from Sandy Grande, a couple from Central, and one from Sawa area as well.
In 1986, through a generous donation of land in Cunupia, the Darul Uloom moved to a home of its own. Formerly opened by its patron, Maulana Abu Saud, the boys' college began with one building. By 1986, the girls' college began at Mufti Shabil's home and later also moved to its own campus in Cunupia. By 1994, when Mufti Shabil's wife had completed the Alima program, she was appointed principal of the girls' college and still holds that position today. The Darul Uloom Trinidad and Tobago kept expanding quickly, becoming the first Islamic institution of its kind in the Caribbean and South America.
Mufti Shabil had this foresightedness about things. He will think far into the future. I'm not saying that he knew the future, but he was a thinker and a very deep thinker.
Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah was a visionary in education. One unlike that what we have seen in our times here in Trinidad and Tobago, or even in most of the Western world. When he came back from India, he had this vision that an alim should not be someone who is aloof from society and unable to interact with people. There was a problem at the time when he came back from studies, and it was that ulama would come back and they would not be able to come down to the level of the everyday person in society. And he strived to alleviate that problem. And that was a vision that he had. And that vision was transferred into our education.
He will call people he knew, friends and relatives, and make them learn under him to ensure that they will learn the basics of Islam. That is all. He wanted the basics. If you want to further your studies, that's up to you, but the basic you must know.
Actually, our current principal, our respected Mufti Wasim Khan, he speaks about the responsibility Dad had on his shoulders even back then.
We met in 1991 officially and started our relationship, student-teacher relationship, and then working under him when I graduated in 1992, so I became a full-time teacher. And besides becoming a full-time teacher, because of his many duties he had to perform and responsibilities, he had made me in charge of the department of IFTA. So all questions coming in, I had to research, give the answer, show it to him. He will go over it. If he need an adjustment, modification, he will do it. We will sit down, we will discuss, many issues affecting the Muslim community, whether it's marriage, divorce, custody of children, maintenance, land distribution, and so many, issues that normally affect family life, as we know very well. So
After that, 1992, he continued. He was the principal. He was the chairman of the school also. And then when he officially, more and more members came in, he officially formed an official administrative committee. And I was part of that administrative committee along with other members who are still here. And then I used to be the secretary, the recording secretary of all our meetings, so I will document it, show it to him, and we'll keep it in record. But because Darul was basically in its initial stages there, where qualified graduates were now coming in one after the other, he alone had to do everything with respect to finance, fundraising, with respect to building, maintenance of building, with respect to hiring workers, allocating their salaries, and also describing their job, like job specs. He had to do everything, and he did it well. He alone. So in those days, everybody was Mufti Shabil, everybody on the tongue, because he had to do everything.
And even though we were quite young, I still remember a lot. My memory, I can recall, although Dad was really busy with Darul because his inception, as Mom would say, Darul was like his baby, like a child as well. We were never deprived, of, going to the beach. He always made time for family. I'm sure you will remember, every other weekend, Dad would take a drive down Charleville, he'd take us with him, and we would start on one side of the highway and finish on the other side, because he has family on both sides of the highway in Charleville. His aunts, his uncles, his cousins, he would go and look for everyone, old, young, everyone. So, we were really attached to the Charleville family growing up, because his siblings all lived in Canada. So he would go and visit his extended family, cousins, aunts, uncle, like I said.
He was very much into sports as well, and I think that's where you got it, right? And ever since, I think you're the one who was all out, extreme. You go extreme in sports. And all the sports that I know, I can say thanks to you and Dad. I'm not much of a sports person, as you know. But even though throughout the different vacations, holidays, etc., as you just mentioned, Dad would make sure to take us around the country. Sometimes it would be very educational tours as well. The Pitch Lake, Pointe-à-Pierre, all these different places he would take us.
Yeah, I remember by the age of 10 years old, 9 years old, I already knew how to get to Las Cuevas or Matura or Icacas or Toco, because we had already seen all the places of interest by such a young age. I mean, apart from all the fun and the games and the fun we have going out, me and you could bear witness, we both know that will come after we finish our schoolwork, homework, we were blessed in a sense. We never went to lessons, any extra lessons for common entrance or whatever, but Mom and Dad always, would teach us lessons at home. And we both excelled in common entrance. We both passed for Hillview College. And I'm sure you can remember, if you didn't perform as required by Dad, you get a little scolding or what we would call a little licks back in the day. And then you might hear, okay, well, no beach tomorrow, or no drive until you understand this lesson or that lesson, both secular and Arabic and Islamic at the same time.
Dad didn't leave room for failure.
Definitely.
Yeah, he was a perfectionist. He was an all-rounder. There was nothing like a plan B. Make plan A work. And I think I still have that in me. Always make things happen.
I consider Mufti as a visionary leader, an all-round leader, in the sense that he had this vision of merging both the academic and the Islamic, which was something that was not really so much present in Islamic institutions. So it was something like first of its kind then, especially in the Western world. But he was holistic in the sense of development is not only with respect to education, but it gives the opportunity for students to show their ability in sports. He would play with us, and even in sports he would be talking and laughing and joking with us, and we appreciated that. We understood that he used to wear different hats. When he was a principal, you need to respect that. When he was giving advice, he was like a mentor to us. We would respect that quality of him. And here, when it is that in the field with us playing football or playing cricket, he would play like, sometimes you'll see that the child part of him came into being then. Understand? Talking and laughing and joking, not in any disrespectful way or anything that would bring down the esteem that he has, but really, it displayed his all-round character.
One thing we noticed with Mufti Shabil is that even though he was much older than us,
He was always the first person on the cricket field, or the first person with the football. You know, he's always the first person. I mean, I thought he could have only played cricket and football, so I decided to play him a tennis match, and he beat me bad. So he was a professional tennis player. He was a professional swimmer and diver.
An all-rounder, unity among Muslims was very important to Mufti Shabil. He was a founding member of the United Islamic Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, the UIOTT, and held the position of chairman for 2 consecutive years.
Mufti Sahib, being the leader that he was, he in fact was the chairman of the UIO for many years. I was fortunate to be involved in it at a certain time, not as a member, but he would have us there sitting and serving the members of the UIO, and I'm sure many of the members would probably remember us serving them tea and water and drinks and snacks and so on. But he would give us that type of involvement to sort of open our eyes and open up our mind to that overall unity that should exist amongst the Muslims. So he was very instrumental in keeping the Muslims in Trinidad united.
You know, there are many people who interacted with Dad at different points, at different levels in his life. You know, many of his earlier students went on to, you know, alhamdulillah, even became teachers at the same institute, the Darul Uloom Trinidad and Tobago today.
There's some like Sheikh Fazil. He was not a student at the Darul Uloom, but he has taught at the Darul Uloom for over 30 years.
Where I was teaching before, I was teaching Arabic, but just basic Arabic to learn to read Arabic basically. And I was doing a little bit of Islamic history as well. And then I was teaching history and Spanish and maths and science. So while I could have done those things, it wasn't really my field that I wanted to do. And when Mufti Shabil asked me to come across here, you know, it was like, you know, it was like a joy, you know, and because this is exactly what I wanted to do with respect to teaching Quran and Hadith and Seerah and all these things. So it was a big, big, big opening for me. It was a big blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal, a great blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal, and I took it with open arms. He was a disciplinarian, but loving, because even though at that time, you know, you could have given some licks to the students, so a lot of them got some licks, but they loved him. There's no student who passed through Darul Uloom would tell you that they didn't love Mufti Shabil, except maybe 1 or 2 for whatever reason. But the majority of the students, even the ones who got the most licks from him, they loved him, because the way he would be with them, he would be firm, yet gentle and calm, and making jokes and having them play sports, giving them lots of feast and all that during Ramadan. Outside of Ramadan, you know, he would come one day and say, okay, from lunchtime we're going to have a cricket match, you know, just like that, you know. So he did a lot of things impromptu, but it was very pleasing to the students and to the teachers as well.
Apart from establishing the Darul Uloom, being a teacher, principal, and administrator, Mufti Shabil's dedication to the development of Islamic education led him to writing and publishing. He published several books which are still used today, both locally and internationally. Some of his manuscripts were published posthumously, while others are in use by the Darul Uloom.
Well, those books are still being studied here. So he died in 1996. That's almost 24 years ago, almost a quarter of a century. And we are still studying those books in the Form 1 to Form 5, right? A bit of it is being done as well in the Alim program, the Higher Islamic Studies program, as well as the Saturday classes. You have a lot of those books being studied, as well as people around the country in Trinidad and outside of Trinidad as well. They using his books and notes on them, because what he attempted to do, and he did it to a good degree, was to facilitate the knowledge, basic knowledge of Quran, Hadith, the Seerah, the Tajweed, and all those things, so that people, the general populace, would be able to read or at least follow, and they would pick up the knowledge from that. So it was. I don't know what he would have done if he was still alive, definitely, because. He had a knack for making things easy for people who want to study whatever sort of knowledge they want, you know, whatever science they want to do from Islamic perspective.
He now took those topics from the Arabic and the Urdu text and so on, and then simplified it in a form that the English speakers and people who are new to, newly studying about this topic will be able to appreciate. So he had that ability of taking very complex thing and then, breaking down to the level and the understanding of students.
One of the things that always stood out about Dad to me was his ability to always allot time to things that were important to him, to the development of people and by extension communities.
Yeah, I always of the opinion that Dad lived a full life. Even though when he passed away, he was just shy of 40 years old. I was in Hillview at the time, in Form 2. You were just finished Standard 5, awaiting common entrance results. But, it was a very tough time for both of us. It took many, many years to get adjusted, a lot of sadness mixed with depression, a lot of things to overcome at such a young age, But I am thankful, we both are thankful that when we look back on the memories we have with Dad, I always say he lived such a full life. Although 39 years old is relatively young to pass away, but we have memories of doing everything with Dad. Whether it's going to vacations, we made little trips to visit the family in Canada, Florida, Tobago. We go down the islands. He played cricket with us downstairs.
Of course.
Football. He would take us to see cricket in the Oval. And where he loved his cricket, you would go and see test matches. One day, he'd be driving and listening to his cricket on the radio. So I guess that's really where the whole sports, came from.
Dad had been ailing for quite some time with cancer. And I remember it was in April of '96 when Dad passed. I was awaiting the common entrance results, actually. His last words to us, I think you would also remember this, where he clearly mentioned it was just two things.
Yeah.
It seemed so simple back then, but as I grow older, I understand that there are so much of a deeper meaning to it. He said, listen to mommy and become alims, which is like Islamic scholars.
Islamic studies.
Yes.
I've never witnessed a janaza or been present in that type of situation where Mufti Shabil was. I was close to him in the sense that when he was ill, I used to actually take him to the doctor. Sometimes he would request for me to do those particular things and drive him out and bring him back and so on. And knowing that he was sick, it was kind of challenging, but to see him pass was one thing, and then to actually be there at the time when his time for his bathing and shrouding and so on, we were the students who actually took part in it, and that was phenomenal in the sense, and it was emotional as well. But also the janazah of that magnitude was tremendous as well. So we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's acceptance of his work and his time on the face of it. So it was really blessed.
It was massive because he died somewhere mid-morning, I believe, or maybe, I think before Dhuhr. And his funeral the janazah was done right here in Darul Ulum. And it was done, I think, just at Maghrib time, because in the night we walked from here to the Mon Road Cemetery, and there were no talks or anything like that, and a lot of people were crying. In fact, someone even fainted on the road walking, and he got a heart attack. Subhanallah, yeah, some guy who came to the funeral. But there was a lot of emotion involved. A lot of people were crying. I was crying, and uncontrollably, all of us, because he was a champion. He was really, really fantastic, and it was huge. It was the biggest funeral I have attended in my time here in Trinidad. And everybody came, everybody, the whole of the Muslim in Trinidad came here. People came from all over the place, from Mayaro, from down south, because they were his students, and then they loved him, and people would donate to Darul Ulum. He was very, very popular, very popular.
Yeah, definitely remember those two lasting words of advice, for sure. I never forgot those words. And I think that was literally the night before he passed away. And after that, I continued in Hillview. And then I think somewhere around 1998 or 99, we both left Hillview. I was in Form 4, I think you were in Form 2. And we went to Darul Ulum. And I finished Form 4 and 5 in Darul Ulum. And then after, of course, I continued the Islamic Studies course, which is an Islamic degree, the Alim program, And I spent 5 years after finishing CXC and graduating in 2005 as with the Islamic degree. And you also?
I myself completed at the Darul Uloom until Form 5.
Right.
And then I went on to do the Islamic Studies course, the Alim program. I did maybe about 1 or 2 years right here at the Darul Uloom. And then I went across to Pakistan, where I did about 3 years of studies across there.
Right.
And then I came back, and that's where I completed at the Darul Uloom. So I have been qualified at the Darul Uloom. Alhamdulillah.
His legacy stretches beyond the walls of the Darul Uloom Trinidad and Tobago because of the way he trained his students. His students are out there doing whatever they can to serve the community of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Grenada, Guyana, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Barbados, America, Canada, England, and many others that I cannot remember. His vision is also being portrayed in those places from his students who are starting up and bringing about new ideas in education and leadership in their communities.
Rashadi Foundation was established to build Muslim communities, to strengthen communities, especially in those less unfortunate areas. We started a masjid in Madras, which we named after Mufti Shabil, alayhi rahmah. And from there, we used it as our base. Then we went to Toko because he had a concern for Toko. He knew there was absolutely no Islam in Toko, and he always thought about how it is we could get this Islam spread in Toko. We went to Kumana village, which is the middle. I don't know if you know Toko, the middle of the whole road from Mathura to Matlat. So we went there in probably about 4 years ago, and we established a masjid there. We probably have about 120 Muslims now. When we went to Toko, there's no Muslims. So there's an established masjid with 5 days maktab. It's a poor community. So the main aim is the children. So one of our main things is that we'll go to the children's school, we'll interact with the principal and the teachers, and we'll go to the sports day, and we take the whole responsibility in school to make sure they go to school, make sure they have spending money in school. We'll take them from school, we'll bring them to the masjid, they'll have a snack, we'll teach them the maktab Islamic, we'll do out all their homework, we'll give them dinner, and then we drop them home.
The Rashadi Foundation, I would say, is a great legacy of Mufti Shabil. The reason being is because Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah established the Darul Uloom with a vision, creating ambassadors to go out there and preach and preserve Islam. So when the Darul Uloom would have produced alims and shuyukh and mashaykh and scholars and imams, the opportunity for them now is to go out and to preach and to encourage this knowledge that they have been blessed with. So they would go out to communities now, and the Rashadi Foundation, we try to work hand in hand in giving the support to the ulama and the scholars, that when they would go to communities, that we would be that means of support for them, to give them that extra hand to support them in any aspect of it. So the Rashadi Foundation, not knowing Mufti Shabil personally, but from all of the inspirational things I've heard from him, I feel like I work directly under him with respect to all of the work that we do.
At the Backward Our Foundation, the activities that we are involved in basically would be on those activities that are surrounding the social aspect of the community. One of them being visiting the old people in our communities and assisting in their home repairs with need repair, preparing their yard, looking at their yards, sometimes some medication that some of them would need, we look after that. We also do food and hamper drives to the community, those poor people in the community that need that help, families, we provide that for them. We also look at zakat distribution as well to communities that in the area that needs that type of help, from books to the children, uniforms. We look at food itself. We look at other areas that they may need some little thing in their business help-wise. We try to fix all these little things to help them go forward And we also look at going to the hospital. The next project we have, visiting the hospital once a month. And we try to get the other communities involved, that if we could go to the hospital at least once per week from each community, that will make a big difference. Because to me, when we visit the hospital, a lot of people there, be it Muslims or non-Muslims, they all look towards us, praying for them and helping them in some way or the other. And we do that, and a little bit of advice, and that makes a big difference in the hospital. Apart from what the doctors would do, we try our best to help as well in making the environment more comfortable for them. We also involve ourselves in activities that would deal with education, street dawah. Street dawah is one of those educations where we actually go to the communities to bring to light the affairs or the things that the Muslims would do to assist the community. We don't just talk about Islam, we don't just let you know this is Muslims, but we actually tell you that, what we could do to make the community a better place, a safer place, what we could assist in. So we share that message with the community. It's not more about just spreading dawah per se. So in that way, we will be able to care and show to the community that, these are things you can access, and this is what we as the Dawah Foundation can offer, and what you can offer as well to the community and assist us as well with, so we can build a stronger team to work in the communities with all the different types of challenges that the communities have. Whatever it is that the community need, we try our best to find an agency, or if we can do it ourselves, or some individual in the community that can contribute to that. Definitely we are there for that.
And concerning the Darulum's construction of masjids and masajids throughout the country, all different parts, this is something actually started with Dad. I remember a couple months before he died, in about February or March month, he had to do the turning ceremony of the first masjid constructed on the Darulum, which is the one that exists in the Darulum school compound now, which was at the time started by the late Hafiz Karamat. I'll be very pleased with him. And even after he passed away, his family continued the legacy and they finished the masjid. And alhamdulillah, today it's one of the most beautiful mosques we have in Trinidad or maybe in the Caribbean.
Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah was a person who had a vision for the future of Islam in Trinidad and Tobago. It is for that reason he brought Islamic education from all over the world to the Darul Uloom in Trinidad and Tobago. And his idea was that nobody should be prevented from seeking Islamic education because it's too far away, and that's why he brought it here. And he encouraged his students to continue to teach Islam in their communities, and that's also how it is connected to the Arangwes Masjid. This will be one of the places where a person can come and learn about Islam in Trinidad and Tobago. The Arangwes Masjid project is connected to Mufti Shabil through one of his students by the name of Ansar. Brother Ansar was a student of Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah even while Mufti Shabil was teaching at the Nur Islam Masjid. And he continued being a student of Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah when the Darul Uloom moved up to Kunupia. Brother Ansar saw a need in the Nur Islam area, in the Sawan area. Because of the expansion of the Muslim community, he saw a need for a new masjid in a different area, but very close by, which is in Arangwes. He had the land, and he chose to give the land to the Darul Uloom in order to expand the Muslim Ummat in Sawa.
Well, I was young at that time when my dad consulted with his teachers for us to move towards Haiti, because what started it was that my dad, after the earthquake, he went and looked at the population and the Muslim situation, and then he came back and he told his teachers that in the entire population of Haiti, about approximately 13 million, there are no scholars present in that island. So they told him to go and start the work and the effort of Deen. So he went and he took his entire family and he decided to go. So for me, I was young, so I looked at it as an adventure. I was excited back then. But growing up and maturing up, looking at the real world and the people around, in a place that is foreign, different language, different nationality, different culture. So after a while, it started to get a bit difficult, but then we still continued serving the people, teaching Islam. So that it started to get easier. Alhamdulillah, now by us there are water supplies, electricity. So then life became comfortable there. my dad runs a madrasa, a clinic, etc. across in Haiti. If you really look at it, the exact same thing Mufti Shabil alayhi rahmah did when he came back from India, and he started in Trinidad. He started a Darul Uloom when there was nothing. He had no one doing any sort of big effort on any madrasa system. It is the same pattern that my dad followed, in that he went to a country that had nothing Islamic that being done, no scholars, and he started from the scratch.
If you were to look back on Dad's life, I took till today I took lots of examples from Dad's life. Many a times I would go and I would meet people, maybe his mechanic at the time back then, or the person he would go to buy chicken or grocery from, and they would always say, I'm not saying he was perfect, but they always made the comment that, I've never seen a man like your dad. I've never seen someone like your father as yet,
Sure.
He would, how straight he would do business, how proper he would, I always know he has taught his students, because they told me that he would never use, his Islamic knowledge, or his going out to study, or all his sacrifice he made to study Islam for, trade it for any worldly benefits, not because he was the first, the first Mufti in Trinidad and Tobago, people tell me till today that, try to give him a discount. He said, no, charge me a normal price. I don't want to discount, I don't want to owe you, I'm not coming back by you again, and, I never knew him to be a person, he didn't really have time for much as he enjoyed sports and hobbies and things. I know his life was a Darul Uloom. I remember, although we had so much fun and so on, at the same time sometimes we have to go out for dinner and we all get ready, and he starts a meeting after school is over in Darul Uloom at 4 o'clock. We expect him to be home around 5, half 5, and sometimes, those people from the Islamic Development Bank, and we had people visiting from different countries, and when he had guests, sometimes meetings would take 5, 6 hours. We had to cancel dinner and things, and Darul Uloom was always his priority, and down to his last, I have memories of him. I remember he was lying on his bed. He was already taking radiation and so on for the cancer, and he would still be teaching his students at school. That first batch of students that graduated in 1994, Maulana Abdul Manan, Maulana Halim, Maulana Gamal, Mufti Kayam, Mufti Shahid, and Mom, of course, was the only female in that class. So that was his dedication down to the last, So a lot of lessons to be learned, and as you get older now, like I said earlier, you appreciate things. He said to you when you were younger. He would say, "Become what you want." I wanted to be a pilot. He said, "No problem. You can become a pilot." He said, "You can become an astronaut, but make sure you have a balance. You have your Islamic studies and your secular." After you become that. And I remember even going to school in Hillview, Form 1, Form 2. When you come home in the evening, he would make sure we do our Arabic studies as well, on par with whatever Form 1 and Form 2 is doing in Darul Uloom.
Definitely. A man of great integrity, and I always admired, and from what I've heard, because I was very young when Dad passed. So, from his students like Mufti Abdul Rahman and those others, I know one thing that you heard that was constant was that his work ethic and his tenacity, dedication to the Darul Uloom and to Islam on the whole was very amazing.
Definitely.
If I could be half the person Daddy was
satisfied with that.
Satisfied.
Alhamdulillah.
In so many ways, Mufti Shabil's journey reflects that during his lifetime, he led with a purpose. Through his unwavering dedication and faith, he offered himself unconditionally to making a meaningful, lasting, and energizing contribution to humanity by serving a cause greater than his own. Not only did he enjoy his living legacy, he created a pathway for others.